Okay, we are now live on YouTube. Okay. Welcome back to the afternoon session of the May 18th public hearing. And we are going to begin this afternoon session with item number 3. The slides of March 18th, but it's actually May 18th. And this meeting and this hearing is being held via Zoom and live streamed on YouTube. So if you would like to watch the proceedings this afternoon, you may visit our YouTube channel to watch the live stream. If you would like to testify on any items this afternoon, please join the public hearing at the estimated time shown on our agenda, which can be found on our website. At the beginning of each item, we will also have a screen up with the information to log in to testify. And so with that, I will turn it over to Corey Harala, our Director of Preservation, to take us through the afternoon agenda.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And as noted, we'll begin with public hearing item number 3, LPC 21-05696, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Queens, Block 182, Lot 56, 39-26 44th Street and the Sunnyside Gardens Historic District. This is a simplified colonial revival style house designed by Clarence Stein and Henry Wright and built in 1927. And the application is to install solar panels.
Commissioners, the applicants have joined the hearing. You now have control of the presentation. You can just click to advance the slides. Please unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you may begin. So if you could just unmute yourself and let me know if you're having any trouble with the presentation. Carita or Luigi, you're the applicants on this item. If one of you can unmute and just let us know if you're having an issue.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Carita speaking. Luigi, are you able to unmute?
So Luigi is present. He does have control of the slides, but if there's some technical issues, I can advance the slides for you if you want to just begin.
Sure, let's go ahead. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Hello.
We can move. Okay.
Hi, my name is Luigi Mota from SunPower by Camtech. I was having some issue. Is everyone able to hear me?
Yes. Okay,
good. All right, so this is our presentation for the solar system proposed for 3926 44th Street. Essentially, we are proposing a 3.5 kilowatt hour 10 panel system for the southern exposure of the house. And just to clarify, this is, I don't think I can move the slide.
I will give you remote control again. It looked like you were having issue with the slides earlier, so okay. I will give you back. If you can just please use either the mouse scroll wheel or the arrow keys up and down to advance the slides, then you should be able to just remain in the full screen mode that we're in right now. Thanks.
Okay. Right. All right, and as you can see, the house is located in the Sunnyside Gardens Historic District. This is the satellite view of the property. As you can see, the house is right on the corner This is 46th Street. Let's see. And this is the system that we're proposing. It's comprised of 10 350-watt modules. We are providing fire path as per regulations. Tilted roof is 30 degrees. It's facing, let me see, 130, excuse me, sorry, what is that? 189 degrees azimuth to the south. And basically this system is projected to produce enough energy to cover the electrical cost that the homeowner is paying. It's projected to 109% of their electrical use. And essentially these are the elevations that the Department of Buildings requires us to prepare for them. We have the panels, but we also have the AC disconnects, the BOS, the balance of system. Essentially, we would need to install this on the outside of the property for rapid shutdown. But if we find that we can, if there's a cleaner and more aesthetically pleasing way to install it on the inside, and we find that we can do that at installation, we may consider doing a much more aesthetically pleasing installation. But for the time being, we're considering doing the AC disconnect on the backyard of the house, which is facing south. And this is the profile of the building. This is what the disconnect looks like. Again, it would go on the outside, but if we find that a better position in the inside, then we might consider that as well. And this is essentially the layout of the basement and where some of the equipment would be located. Let's see. And these are superimposed images of what we expect the system to look like after installation. This is from the 46th Street view across the street. The house is right here in the center. And if we go to the next slide, we have different views. This is what it looks like from the north with this green square. This is what it would look like from the same street level. Let's see. This is from across the street. And these are just more direct east and west views of the house. These are renders of the system. And these are the shade analysis that we produced in order to get a sense of what the performance of the system will be. And we also prepared a north-facing system, but as you can see, it's not getting nearly as much sun, and it's also being covered by a tree, or would be covered by a tree. So the best scenario here would be to install it on the south side. Let's see what else. And this just goes into the specs of the components that we would have to install. It would be the AC disconnect as usual, and we have a monitoring system that sees how the system will perform over its lifetime. And these are more for the aesthetic look of the panel. We're considering having a kind of like a strip so that it looks a lot cleaner. It's much more pleasing to the eye. Let's see what else. These are the specs of the modules. They are black on black. So they don't, for example, they don't, typically your solar panels have like a white grid on them, but these are black entirely. And yeah, people typically like these on their homes to preserve the image. What else? This is the racking system that we attach to the frame of the house, to the rafters and joists. Essentially, we put the panels on top of a racking system, then that connects to L-foots, and those are drilled to connect into the actual frame of the house. And this provides structural stability. This keeps the panels from flying off from the wind, and it also ensures that nothing harms the roof itself too. And these are the so this house has slate tiles, and basically we would need to do some very minor alterations to the tiles themselves, but for the most part we would just be moving some tiles, and none of the alterations would be visible from the outside. It would be just number of connections onto the roof without needing to, destroy any of the property. And we would also retain any of the tiles that might need to be relocated, but they would definitely require some drilling. And that's essentially the system that we're proposing for Mr. David Champa.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Why don't we, Commissioner Devonshire, go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned a monitor, which is an additional box on the side of the building. Is that a necessity for the house, or is that a mechanism for your purposes only?
Yeah, it would be for the house. Typically, we want to see that we take care of our customers in the sense that we give them a product that we can monitor from a distance. And we want to make sure that they're getting all of the production that we promise. And it also makes it easier to service the system from afar. So yeah, it benefits the house.
Okay.
Can you go back to the photos from 43rd Street? Anyone looking south to north would be
South
good.
to north. Gotcha.
Okay, so
Sorry.
no, go back. This is fine right here.
Yeah.
So commissioners, as you know, this historic district was designated as a model garden home development that was an early development for workers' housing, for affordable housing in many ways, with the notion that working class people should have access to affordable housing that has light and air and green space. And so the houses were built on very small footprints, about 25% of the lot. And they were laid out, so the siting was important. They were laid out on most blocks around a common center green space or yard. And on two of the blocks, there are rows of buildings that are perpendicular to the street. So on 44th Street to 43rd Street, you have a set of these muse buildings that go perpendicular, and their fronts face a common garden between them, and then their backs face driveways. And so just so you understand the setting here, this is, we're looking at the western end of a building that's in one of these muse over garages on a street that's now outside of the historic district. So you're outside of the district looking over the garages to the back of these muse. And the front of what we're looking at in this photograph is the back of the house. The front of the house is on the north side, and the front and the back, in fact, all of the buildings are built very consistently. So there were about 7 maybe prototypes of buildings that were, some had full pitched roofs, some had half pitched roofs, some had flat roofs. And these prototypes were replicated throughout the district to add a little variety, but they were otherwise designed very consistently with a uniform brick and and most of the ornament was limited to decorative brick patterns, a limited wood ornament, and then slate on the roofs. And the idea behind this sort of repetitive material and design was to make these buildings economical. So the front and the back look very, very similar. So what we're looking at in this photograph is the back of the building. So as I understand it, the conduit and the meter box will be on the rear facade, but probably down below where that fence is, sort of kind of behind the garages. And then the solar panels you see rendered into the roof. In this particular row, all of the houses have their slate except for the one immediately to the right, which has a replacement material that's darker material. So I just hope that sort of provides a little bit of context for you to be able to evaluate how this solar panel is seen in the context of the district. All right, any other questions?
Sarah, there was another, there's another view I think that they had. Thank you for the explanation, which was very helpful. I'm familiar with obviously the district, but others aren't. So that was, I think there was another view, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's from the north looking south, where you're looking over the front of the building, but the solar array is on the other side of the roof, so you don't see it from this view.
Yeah, no. So that's it really can't be seen from. Yeah, again, that's from the across just beyond the muse, so to speak. So that's really the only place, because of the way the buildings are situated, you'll be able to see it. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? All right, why don't we go to public testimony and then see if we have any other questions and then move to discussion. If you're in this meeting and would like to testify on this item, please raise your virtual hand so we can identify you. And we'll start with anyone who signed up in advance, and I will turn it over to Lisa Krasavich to walk us through the testimony.
Okay, thank you. We had one person sign up, Mark Bench. I'm going to bring you in now.
Thank you. Chair Carroll, Commissioners, good afternoon. This house falls outside the frame for buildings on which the Victorian Society typically comments. However, we are testifying because the issue of photovoltaic installations in historic districts is timely and of potential relevance to many other districts. We oppose this application because of the high visibility of the proposed installation, the effects, including physical damage to the slate roof, and the likelihood that approval will lead to additional applications with similar adverse results. We think that rules regarding photovoltaic installations, including master plans for districts such as Sunnyside, would be very helpful to prevent a chaotic effect that over time will degrade the character of these historic districts. Such a plan for Sunnyside would account for flat versus pitched roofs and taller versus shorter buildings. We note that at this end of the complex, the flat roof garages might be feasible for PV installations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see anybody else with their hand raised.
Thank you. And Rich, do we have any written testimony?
No other additional written comments.
Okay, thank you. All right, so commissioners, do we have any final questions for the applicant? Mr. Moda, is there any final comment you'd like to make?
None on my behalf. Karita, do you have any other input?
No, that's it. You presented the different measures that we took to minimize any visibility or negative impact. That's it.
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay. All right, thanks. Commissioner Devonshire, I think you have another question.
Yeah, I'd like to hear a response to the proposition that the panels be placed on the flat roof garages. What prevents that from being a suitable application?
The garages are privately owned by a separate person. We would only be able to install directly on the homeowner for this project.
The garages are separate property.
Yeah.
They're all individually owned by different property owners and not associated necessarily with these houses.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Jefferson?
Yeah, if you could go back to your detail of the flashing. You had a flashing detail on the roof. You had an elevation. You had a rendering of the flashing on the roof?
Rendering on the front.
That one.
Oh, this one.
No, the last one. This one. The
Right.
edge.
Yeah.
Panel. Is it going to be that color or is it black?
The edge strip.
Yeah, the edge strip that sticks up that you see. You see that you see how it hits the roof. You see that edge, that flashing piece. What color is that?
Yeah, that should be black to match the panels themselves as well.
That would be black. So what I'm seeing here is the gray to the right-hand side. That's inaccurate, right?
Gray to the right-hand side?
Yeah, but you see the gray. It looks gray to me in this photo.
It might be a reflection.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's black. It's black. Okay.
Yeah.
So the whole system is a black system.
Yes.
Okay. Monochromatic black. Okay.
Can I add to this? The
Please.
purpose of this skirt is to avoid or block any possible view of any wiring that's under the panels.
No, thank you. I understand. I was just trying to see if the system is a plane, as we call it in architecture. It's just one surface rather than having the piece that stick up another color. So you've answered my question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions? Okay, I guess we will move to close the hearing and begin our discussion. So I'm starting to unmute all of you. And here we go. Okay, Commissioner Lutfi, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Devonshire, would you second that motion?
I second it.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, why don't we go back to the view from 43rd Street where you actually see this. So you don't see this from within the Mews or from 44th Street within the district. You're seeing it over the back here, over these garages, which, as we've described, are independently owned and not necessarily even owned by anyone within the historic district. You know, it's an interesting question. There are pitched roofs that are visible throughout this district. Many of them have skylights on them, particularly in the Mews and on both sides of these roofs. So, and we've approved skylights. So we have found other installations to be appropriate on the pitched roofs. You know, I think it was raised in the testimony that there is a consistency that is notable in this district. And so to the extent that there are a certain set of prototype buildings that have a pitched roof where some portions of them may be visible, I think short of a master plan, we want to think about the fact that our decisions would be setting a model for these buildings, particularly the two blocks that have Mews where they would be most visible. Others have rear slopes that face into interior gardens in the middle of the block. And again, this particular row has a little bit more variety in the roof materials because some have been replaced already, and the roof to the immediate right is a much darker color with skylights. So, and I think, you know, thinking about this as sort of a innovative housing reform model to ensure light and air and green space in an affordable way, you know, I think there's sort of a philosophical idea that solar panels could maybe fit into that in a sort of philosophical way. But why don't we start the discussion kind of with our usual considerations of, you know, affecting fabric and visibility and compatibility with the form and massing of the building. And we can then sort of get to also the more theoretical notions about the, you know, the sort of innovative siting and model and goal for this particular development of Sunnyside Gardens. So Commissioner Chapin, would you like to start this discussion?
Thank you. Thank you. You know, I think in general, the commission has tried to be supportive of these installations, difficult as it sometimes is in certain circumstances, to find ones that are appropriate because of the, you know, desirability of energy conservation, similar to our situation in trying to provide accessibility at locations. And in this case, I think first that as far as the materials are concerned, they're going to preserve the materials and they could be replaced. And obviously in the future, if things were to change and this type of installation was no longer to be used. I think that this particular circumstance is actually very conducive relatively, because the only view you're going to have is over these garages from outside the district, and within the district walking around, because of the position of the houses, you're really not going to see these solar panels. And as you stated, there are also skylights. So it's not that there are no interruptions to roofs, these pitched roofs. And I also think that it really doesn't provide a precedent, except perhaps for buildings in exactly the same circumstance, because in Sunnyside, often you have individual houses and they're in a very different situation, and we'll have to look at each of those independently. I think we'd be a little hard pressed to come up with a master plan overall for Sunnyside. Well, at least it would be very complicated, let's put it that way. Perhaps for the Muse, we could come up with something of a direction for, but I'm not sure, would it be a certain percentage of the roof? Would it be a certain side of the roof? You know, and at this point, I think we may be just well considered to look at each individual case. And as we look at them, look at what we have previously approved and see, you know, how they comport with those. My recollection is we have at least one other approved solar roof in Sunnyside. Am I correct? There may be more.
I'm not sure about in Sunnyside, but we've done others on visible pitched roofs in other districts.
Yeah, I just had a feeling that we had a small one somewhere on an individual house, but I could be something else. In any event, I believe this is approvable in this context. I think it is appropriate in this particular context for the gardens. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And I think also that it's sort of flat and low to the roof and follows the slope of the roof.
Yeah.
Helps as well. Okay, Commissioner Devonshire?
I liken these size solar panels to those early images of IBM computers that filled an entire room or an entire warehouse. And now we have computers that are, you know, the size of a credit card. And I think we're at the early IBM stage with these things. So someday we'll have a solar array on a roof that is the size of a skylight and not the size of half of the roof. That day, I'm sure, will come. And so I'm looking at reversibility. And in this case, it looks like they may destroy a few slates. Most of the slate at Sunnyside came from Vermont, and they're still pumping out slate in Vermont like crazy. So we don't have to worry about getting replacement materials there. So I am convinced I will never consider anything a precedent, as you know, but I am convinced that this is an acceptable solution to making us a little greener. And if every other house in that row wanted one, I would be acceptable to that as well. So I'm all for it.
Great, thank you. And I think, I think you're right about the technology. It will continue to change. And another reason why you wouldn't necessarily want to develop a master plan, because even now, depending on where a building is located and its access to the sun, it may have different requirements. And then as technology changes, that would get smaller and smaller.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, Commissioner Chen.
Yeah, I love the comments for the two prior commissioners. This is very similar to our issue confronting accessibility for ADA, as well as the need for energy conservation, and your comments about this is workers' housing and being affordable, and hopefully in the reduction of the costs. And I'm initially was thinking about whether a master plan, if the neighbors are seeing the success or want to copy it, that it may be appropriate, since they are all facing sudden exposure, that they at least be consistent. Not that we can mandate a master, master timeline. But but Commissioner Devonshire's point is well taken. Given the density and the photovoltaic cells are getting more efficient, I think for now, this is on the edge and is not visible from within the mill, I think is acceptable.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lutfi.
Yeah, so I agree with that comment that Wellington made, which you.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Am I unmuted?
Yeah, yes.
I'm unmuted. Yeah, this was developed as cost-effective. First of all, conceptually, it was developed as cost-effective housing, and energy efficiency builds upon that and reinforces it. So conceptually, I can buy into this completely. And I think the way that they're executing this is well done. The installation is very low profile and understated. It doesn't really in any way change the line of the roofs, the location over the garages with limited visibility. I also think is very helpful. I do think a master, even though I completely agree with what Michael said, we don't know how long it's going to take for technology to advance. And I do think we should think about having a master plan. And if on some of the buildings, because of the way the light might hit the roof, it makes sense for the panes to be on the other side. Well, that should be part of that should be an alternate in the master plan. But in the meantime, to have it done in a consistent way using the same company, the same kind of installation, the same product, I think that would be perfect.
Yeah, and I agree. I think there are, in that the materials and details of this district are repetitive, that having one sort of type of photovoltaic panel design would be appropriate. I do think building to building, the site sunlight conditions may vary, and the size would then vary depending on what they need, even today. So, and of course, then whether you're facing north or south. So I think, a master plan would have to be developed in consultation with experts who would understand the solar requirements of site by site. But certainly making a decision today based on a certain type of panel that's flat, low slung, has limited penetrations into the slate, is a good model and something that we can use as we think about these going forward. Okay, Commissioner Bland, I think
we would have the reversibility, which would be great, as everyone said.
Yeah, Commissioner Bland.
I didn't take it personally. You skipped over.
Thank you. Sorry.
Well, there's not much more to say on this. I think it's fairly small, but I will add a little bit more. I think these solar panels are much easier to deal with in cases like this. And of course, more or less flat roof townhouses where they can be really minimally or not seen at all. It's in cases in single family house districts where highly sloped pitched roofs exist, et cetera, et cetera. And then even more to catch the perfect angle. You know, some of these things are often lifted off the roof and then change the angle entirely. And those are very difficult, I think, no matter the environmental benefits. So long story short, it's mostly been said. I certainly support it here. I don't think it in any way destroys my ability to understand and read the building below it. And I think it's fine. And I don't see any point in a master plan, actually. I think all of this is one by one, and we'll just see and wait for them to come. This is a good model, however.
Great. All right, Commissioner Jefferson.
I don't have much to add, but I do think that this view, which is the end view, I was worried about what would you see at the end, and I thought if we replicate these panels on all three buildings, there will be a consistency. So within the donut, within the middle of this development, you won't see the panels, but from the edge you would see it. And if you did see it, it's fine with me. It looks composed. So I approve this. I think as long as the panels are consistent with the flashing and can be removed at some point, I approve it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gustafson.
It's hard to say that this array of panels detracts from this view, largely this view of the historic district, largely because the hodgepodge of garages is what really detracts from the way the historic district appears. You know, this looks like post-Soviet St. Petersburg, Russia. You know, there's hundreds of these things that are just rusting away.
That's coming from our garage fan, expert and fan.
I stand up for these things, but not in this. My garage doesn't look anything like this. But in any event, the solar array though certainly does not detract from the historic district. So I'm in agreement. This is appropriate.
Thank you, Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Yes. So this is interesting because. Well, it reminds me of Catherine Bauer Worster's book about 1920s row houses, German row houses at Seilenbau. And in her book was like 1934, 36 or something, modern housing. And she spends a lot of time talking about this or analyzing the German planners' preoccupation with solar orientations and sun responsiveness, and it was clearly on the minds. That supposedly they got a lot of it wrong. Some of the early science on orientation and solar relationship of those row houses to the solar positioning and gains and so on, but. It was a preoccupation, and so too were solar panels in those early days and their development in this kind of heliotropic housing. So I think that this goes back to your point, Chair Carroll, about it being sort of philosophically aligned with the purpose of economy and light and a kind of an egalitarian access to all of that. So I think that for those reasons and the others described, it's very appropriate here.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Holford-Smith?
She's gone, remember?
Oh, she's gone. She did, yes. Okay. All right. So I think then that's everyone, and I think we're all in agreement, and there's a consensus to approve. So Commissioner Chapin, would you make the motion?
Yes, I'm sorry, I had to unmute. Yes, in the matter of a certificate of appropriateness, Borough of Queens, LPC 21-05-696, 3926 44th Street, Sunnyside Gardens Historic District. A simplified colonial revival style house designed by Clarence Stein and Henry Wright and built in 1927. Application is to install solar panels. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Sunnyside Gardens Historic District. I also note that the expansion of solar panel installations on public and private buildings is a component of the city's plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to combat the threats of climate change, and that solar panel installations on designated buildings are approved on a regular basis by the commission, typically on flat roofs, but also on pitched roofs, including some installations that are visible from a public thoroughfare. I recommend approval, finding that the visibility of the solar panel installation on this pitched roof is due to code requirements, site conditions, and the necessity of the panels to face south for proper performance and economic viability, that the proposed location of the solar panel array on the rear south-facing roof will only be visible over garage outbuildings and will not detract from the building or the streetscape, that the solar panels will have a low profile and will be mounted parallel to the pitch of the roof, thereby maintaining the roof plane, that the simple rectilinear configuration and dark uniform appearance of the solar panels and framing elements against the dark background of the slate roofing will have a neutral presence on the roof, that the installation of the solar panels will be reversible in the long term and will clearly be visually differentiated as a modern renewable energy installation, that the modern slate shingles will be stored on site for future reinstallation in case of the removal or obsolescence of the panels, and that the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building or the Sunnyside Gardens Historic District.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chen, would you second that motion?
Second it.
Thank you. And Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire.
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
And Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Okay, I believe Commissioner Holford Smith is gone for the day. So with 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion carries.
So that's approved. Thank you. And we'll move to the next item.
Next item is number 4, LPC 20-08505, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Queens, Block 8024, Lot 14, 326 Richmond Road in the Douglaston Historic District. This is a colonial revival style house built circa 1915. The application is to legalize alterations to the house and site without LPC permits and to alter the entrance porch and construct a new garage.
And Commissioners, the applicants have joined the hearing. You now have control of the presentation. Please be sure to unmute yourself and state your name for the record, and you may begin.
Hi, my name is Joe Sultana. I'm the applicant for this application. I'd like to go over our proposed project. Okay, so you're gonna control the slides on all I just explained?
No, Craig Radix has control of the slides currently.
Craig has control of the slides, that's fine. Okay, so this is, the left side is the site plan of the Douglaston Manor historical area. The right side, Craig, go back to the same slide. Sorry. Hold on a second, I'm having some technical difficulties here. Okay. I'm sorry, just give me 2 seconds. We're trying to get this in order here. Craig, can you go back to the first slide, please?
So you can just use the mouse keys. I'm sorry, the mouse or the arrow keys to advance the slides back and forth.
I don't have control of the screen.
Craig can do that. So if there's some issues with the slide control, I'm happy to sort of just advance them on your behalf.
Yeah, if you can please go to the first one. I can start from the first one.
Sure, let me just get back to the beginning. Then if you just say next slide whenever you want to advance.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, the upper right-hand corner is the historic photos of the original house that shows the portion of the hood that's blocked behind the tree and the garage at the lower level to the left with a sloped driveway with some retaining walls. The bottom image is a plot plan of the view corridors between our house and our neighbors' houses, illustrating where the garage is going to be in the rear yard. It's, if you look at the slide, it's to the right-hand corner of the property, right-hand bottom corner of the property. Can you advance to the next slide, please? Okay, so the photos on the left are the existing pictures of what the house looks like. So the top left is the front elevation with the original hood. Then there's a side view in the middle, and there's additional pictures of the rest of the house, which don't take into account what we're doing right now. It's just the front one's the most important picture. And then the bottom right picture shows the garage in the lower level with the retaining walls, the very, very narrow driveway. And it's a very steep slope from the sidewalk into that garage. The upper right-hand picture is sort of like a photo montage of what this presentation is about. We're extending the hood over the front door, 18 inches. We're removing the garage door from the lower level, removing the retaining walls and the driveway, and building a new one-car garage in the rear yard that's tucked in behind the house. It's offset 5 feet from the side yard and 5 feet from the rear property line. Next slide, please. These are photos of the house under construction. We already have permits and LPC approval for doing work at the house. So we're just showing photos of the progress of the ongoing construction. Next slide, please. Okay, these are the plot plans. Left side is the existing, that shows where the existing concrete driveway currently was. And the rear yard is just, it's a 60 by 100 lot. There's nothing in the rear yard. The adjacent neighbor to the rear has a wood frame garage tucked into our upper right-hand corner of the site. The proposed plan, which is on the right side, shows the new concrete driveway. We're going to repair and remove the existing curb cut there, restore the curb, put in a new curb cut, and construct a one-car garage in the rear yard. The shaded area is an extension that was already approved by Landmarks, and that's ongoing construction right now. And as far as the plot plan, the front entrance is just going to be widened a little bit with new pavers in the front. Next slide, please. These are plans for the proposed garage. It's a standard one-car garage. We're going to side it and paint it to match the house. There's going to be a new garage door installed. It's also going to be painted to match the front door of the house. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are the elevations. The one on the left is the existing elevation. The front of the house, you can see how far down that garage door is buried right in the front yard. So it is a very, very steep slope into the garage. Sort of a dangerous condition when you're leaving the garage. It's so steep that you don't see pedestrians on the sidewalk as you're coming out of the garage. So it's more of a public safety issue. So the right picture, actually, sorry, go back to the left one. It also shows the existing hood over the front door. It's a single door. The proposal is going to be to patch up that garage, like I said before, change the garage, change the main door, add some side lights, and extend the hood towards the street 18 inches, rebuild it, and we're proposing adding corbels to either side of the hood just for additional design and decor. That's it on this slide. Everything else has already been approved by Landmarks. If you can move to the next one, please. These are the drawings that are already approved by Landmarks. There's nothing on here that's for this presentation. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a detail of the front door. It's a wood door that's going to be painted white. If you move to the next slide, you'll see the Simpson doors that we're purchasing, and we're gonna paint them white. The photos on the bottom are other sort of homes similar to our style with one car, actually 2-car garage. We're only building a 1-car garage. Next slide, please. That's details for the garage door. What the garage door is going to look like. It's very similar to the front door. And please, this is a catalog from the manufacturer. We are going to be painting the doors white. Next slide, please. These are samples for the roof, which is going to match the same color as the house. And the next slide on the bottom is the siding. This is the new driveway. And the driveway is going to be finished to match the winter beige tinted concrete that's approved by Landmarks. I think that's it. I think one more slide. This is the detail. These are the details for the hood in the front. So the picture, the top plan is the existing plan of the hood. Detail number 2 is the 18-inch projection. Detail 3 is the current elevation. Detail 4 is the proposed elevation with the door and the side lights, and the corbels, the custom brackets that we're going to add to the side of each side of the door. And the picture on the right is the current hood that's there without any corbels. It's not a true arch. It's sort of a little, maybe they made a mistake when they built it, I don't know. But we're going to try to get it as close to a true arch as possible. Next slide, please. And that's it. So I've never done this on Zoom before, so I guess I'd like some comments and some feedback.
Yeah. Great. Thank you for the presentation. So commissioners, do we have any questions at this time? Okay, I don't think so. I think your presentation was very thorough and clear, so thank you. Why don't we see if we have any public testimony? If you're in the meeting and would like to speak on this item, please raise your virtual hand so we can identify you. And I will turn it over to Lisa to take us through the testimony.
Okay, we're going to start with Kelly Carroll. And Kelly, I've brought you in.
Thank you, Lisa. Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council. The introduction of side lights to this entrance renders any glazing on the door itself unnecessary. A solid 4-panel door would be more appropriate here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see anybody else with their hand raised.
Okay, thank you. And Rich, do we have any written testimony?
Yes, we do have a resolution from Queens Community Board 11, and at the time, they recommended that the garage door be a carriage door style, then that shrubbery be installed along the east wall of the garage.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now I'd like to turn back to the applicant and ask if you'd like to address any of the comments.
Yes, on our site plan, we are showing shrubbery on both sides of the garage, on the side yard and in the rear yard. That's the plot plan to the right. So we are going to shelter this from our neighbors as much as we can with some greenery.
Okay, and did you also make revisions to the design of your door since the community board?
The carriage, we met with the community board and we did change the door. The door is, I think it's the third slide past this one.
Okay, so you heard the comment, you were responsive to it.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any final questions? Okay, I'm going to start unmuting you all, or requesting to unmute you so that we can begin our discussion. All right, and Commissioner Bland, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Okay, and Commissioner Shamir Barron, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion, and there's two components to this application. One is to replace the door hood with a new similar door hood, but that projects out a little bit deeper and has brackets underneath it, and then to modify the entrance opening to create side lights on either side. And then the second component is to create a driveway and a garage in the back, which I think is a place where they're often found in this historic district. So Commissioner Gustafson, would you like to start this one?
Yeah, sure. I'm normally the biggest troublemaker about legalizing anything. However, the standard remains the same for me, which is, would we have approved this in the first instance? And I think that the image in the upper right is the answers that question, which is to say, it's hard to even imagine, if you didn't know what it looked like previously, it is kind of hard to imagine what it looked like, which is to say, the removal of that garage door is not an issue for me at all. As for the details, and the new freestanding garage actually does appear, as you noted, Chair Carroll, in a position that you would actually expect to see a garage in this neighborhood, in this district. As for extending the hood out, I'm okay with that. The door details, I think what I think Historic Districts Council suggested is that if you have the side lights, you probably don't need any additional glass in the door, and I think that's probably true. But I really don't want to. Maybe they can work with staff on the details of the door. Otherwise, I'm fine.
Yeah, and I think, and the proposed door just has the lights at the top. It's otherwise a paneled door, right? So I think.
Yeah, I just haven't got seeing it.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Commissioner Shamir Barron. Yeah.
Yes. I think I'm in agreement with Commissioner Gustafson. I can see approving this. I don't really have. I mean, maybe those lights. So clarify what you just said. The lights are not in the door, or are in the door, the top.
So there are. At the top of the door there is a group of lights, and perhaps I'm looking at the rendering. Perhaps we could move to the elevation. That would show it a little bit easier, a little more clearly. I mean, so I understand from the rendering that these 4 panels are solid, and that the 4 small lights at the top are glazed. So I think it is more or less a solid panel door, except for at the top.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate. I don't think there are issues with it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, I would say both the door and the garage are typical of this district and very appropriate. The garage is small, subordinate to the main building, uses the materials and colors of the house. Many of the garages, as was noted in this district, are doubled garages. So I think that I think all of this is, and as I said, the door is very typical of other doors in the district. So I think both of these are very much approvable, and I'm fine with them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Devonshire?
I think it's nicely done and very appropriate.
Okay, Commissioner Chen?
Likewise, yeah.
Commissioner Bland?
I'm okay with all of it.
Commissioner Lutfi?
Agree, it's approvable.
Okay. Commissioner Jefferson?
All very appropriate.
Okay. All right. So, Commissioner Gustafson, are you comfortable making a motion, or do you want to not make the motion?
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
I understand it. I thought it had four. Anyway, it's fine.
I realized when I saw the elevation that is probably what everybody thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. So if
Okay.
you'll make the motion, that would be great.
Yeah, in the matter of LPC 20-08505, 326 Richmond Road, Douglaston Historic District. The application is to legalize alterations to the house and site without Landmarks Preservation Commission permits and to alter the entrance porch and construct a new garage. I note the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Douglaston Historic District. I recommend approval, noting that the removal of the historic garage doors and the filling in of the opening into driveway did not result in the removal of significant architectural and landscape features, that the proposed garage will have a subordinate relationship to the house, that the materials, colors, details, roof line, and orientation of the proposed garage are in keeping with the design of the house, that locating the garage towards the rear of the lot is typical of the siding of garages in this historic district, that side lights at main entrance doors and a bracketed entrance hood are typical features on colonial revival style houses in the district, and that the work is supportive of the special architectural and historic character of the building and the Douglaston Historic.
Thank you. And Commissioner Shamir Barron, would you second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
and Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Okay, with 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion carries.
Okay, that's approved. Thank you. And we'll move to the next and final item.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll move to item number 5, LPC 21-06105, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 842, Lot 21, 1-3 Union Square West, the Lincoln Building individual landmark. This is a Romanesque revival style transitional skyscraper designed by R.H. Robertson and built in 1889 to 1890. And the application is to replace entrance and fill.
Commissioners, the applicants have joined the hearing. You may begin.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Cass Stackelberg, Higgins, Quaysbarth and Partners. Let me just begin by advancing. Let's see. Okay, terrific. Very good. So I'm joined today by Brian McFarland of Centra Ruddy, who is the design architect, my colleague Julie Rosen from Higgins Quaysbarth, and we're part of a larger team that includes Ted Ecker of Walter B. Melvin, who's working on a restoration project at the building entry that is under review by the staff. And our client, Lori Buckbinder of Buckbinder Warren, who are longtime owners of the building, 1 Union Square West, historically known as the Lincoln Building. As Corey mentioned, the scope of work is quite limited. It is really just to replace the non-historic entry infilled at the building entry on the Union Square West elevation. And as I mentioned, there's a program of restoration going on right now for the portal itself for the masonry work. The building is located on the northwest corner of 14th Street and Union Square West, down in the southwest corner of Union Square, individually designated a landmark in 1988, designed by R.H. R.H. Robertson. It's a 9-story commercial building that includes a bearing wall, a masonry bearing wall around the perimeter, and interior steel and cast iron framing. And the designation report calls the building, or refers to the building, as a transitional skyscraper because of this hybrid construction technology using metal framing for the interior systems and masonry for the perimeter. As I mentioned, the area of work is limited just to that entry. Some existing condition or pre-work photographs across the base. Right now, there's scaffolding around the entry for the restoration program. On the left is a photograph of the base of the building on the Union Square West elevation. You can see the non-historic infill here, and then the very tall transparent glazed storefronts along the Union Square West elevation, which wrap the corner onto 14th Street. A detailed photo on the right of the current conditions of the base of the building, with the entry here on the far right. What you can see is the stainless steel and glass infill, which dates to the second half of the 20th century. We think perhaps 1960s, 1970s. It's got a low transom and short doors, 7/0 doors, set in with this sort of percolite framing system. And you can see in this photograph the general condition of the limestone and granite around this entry portal, which has not withstood time particularly well, and is being restored. I'll also just point out that you can see in this photograph the depth within the opening that the entry infill, including the transom and doors, are set. And in fact, we know from doing probes on the interior that the historic location, or the original location of the doors, were actually set back another 12 inches within this opening. So the entry infill historically was quite deeply set into the original portal. Some historic views of the building in the beginning, end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th century. A photograph of the building in 1890 when it was completed, 1920s photograph, 1890s photograph, and then 19-teens photograph. And what you can see here is this tripart arrangement with a tall ground floor, this shaft with a Romanesque revival detailing, and then this arcade across the top representing this capitol structure. And at the base of the building in the 1890s, you can see these very tall storefronts, full height glass with very slender mullions. And by the 19-teens, the storefronts had sort of been had evolved, and there was a very large sign band that ran across the storefronts, and sort of a compression of the ground floor. But a couple things to point out about the entry here. You can see it, and I'll show you a detailed photograph of the entry here from this photograph in the 1890s. But the entry doors were set behind a heavy wrought iron gate and deeply set in that opening. And I think in this photograph, I think this is very telling about that depth. In 1916, with the sun perhaps directly overhead, you can't even see the infill within the opening, given its depth. The second half of the 20th century, you can see there was this sort of slow loss of transparency and degradation across the base of the building, overcladding of all the storefronts on 14th Street and Union Square West, with the entry portal remaining, but it too being sort of beaten up over time. The photo, this is a 1940s tax photo, of course, on the left, 1980s tax photo at the center, and then a designation photo from 1988 here on the right. You can see that overcladding that existed through the end of the 20th century until the restoration work that was carried out in the late 1990s. Some detailed photographs of the entry itself. So again, this is the late 1890s photograph, and you can see that heavy iron gate and grill up at the transom level. Originally, the doors were wood and glass, we believe, with a tall bottom panel that aligned with this granite base. By the 1930s, that door had been changed to a different wood and glass door. You can see the bottom panel now is set below that granite base. And then the doors at the time of designation, and the current doors, the stainless steel and glass doors. So the doors that are there today are at least the third generation of infill that is in place at the building entry. And of course, our proposal is to remove this unsympathetic addition and install compatible contemporary doors in their historic location. So looking at an existing photo on the left and a rendered view on the right. Again, the area of work is centered here on the far edge of the photograph. And the proposal is to install bronze frame doors and transom in the original location, in the original depth of the opening, and to do it in obviously a far more noble material than what exists today. A detailed rendering, again, an existing photo of the base of the building here on the left and a rendered view here on the right. You get a sense of the scale of the opening relative to the storefronts. This is, it's you know, a large opening, but it's actually quite diminutive in proportion to the scale of the storefronts to their south. And then you can also see the wonderful restoration work that is underway right now, restoring the granite base, all the limestone elements, and the reconstruction and replication of or recreation of the griffins on these posts and these pedestals, all in limestone as part of this this overall effort. Some line drawings to illustrate existing and proposed, existing on the left and proposed on the right. You can see the transparency that we're trying to get back to, really compatible with the way the infill is treated across the rest of the base of the building. Comparative detail elevations with the existing door on the left and proposed on the right. This is a finished sample of the bronze that we're proposing. It's a dark statuary bronze that will complement the dark finish of the storefronts to the south. And just to point out a few dimensions that we think are relevant, the existing doors are only 7 feet tall, and this transom is about 5.5 feet tall. And what we're able to do is get back to a proportion much closer to the historic, with 9'6" tall doors and about a 3'6" tall transom, a heavy bottom rail, slender framing to allow for daylighting into the interior, and alignment of the transom bar near the base of the capitals. On the interior, we don't typically show you interior photographs as part of a exterior scope or exterior proposal, but we thought it was actually particularly relevant in this case because what's happened over time within the building lobby, which is actually quite small, is the introduction of these highly reflective materials within the lobby in an effort to sort of bring daylight and bring a better quality of that space. And so we've got an overall key plan here of the ground floor of the building with the lobby called out, and then a detailed plan of the lobby here. What you can see in the current condition is that when you come into the building from Union Square West, you're faced immediately with the side elevation of the elevator shaft. So that's sort of the first impediment. And then it's a relatively small volume within this lobby. And what's happened over time is that not only was there a drop ceiling installed inside the lobby, but there were these highly reflective materials that were added to bring light and bounce light around in the space and improve the quality of that interior, including this highly polished stainless steel on the elevators, polished marble on the walls, and then a later generation of finishes, these sort of spandrel glass, this light colored spandrel glass, again, cladding all of the wall surfaces to bring daylight into the interior, as was the effort. So what we're showing here is that generation, that sort of pre-work condition, what it looks like today once those finishes have been removed, and then a rendering of the interior looking out across Union Square West to Union Square Park, really just to give you an indication of sort of the goals here and what's driving this is obviously to improve the quality of design for the infill for this building that is a significant individual landmark, but also to bring more daylight into the interior. So we're refinishing the walls in white stone, recladding recladding the elevator enfragement in bronze, restoring and recreating historic plaster finishes that existed previously within the lobby. So this effort of bringing more daylight and transparency to the perimeter and into the lobby itself. Some comparable plans, an existing plan here and a proposed plan here, just to indicate the position of the doors. We know from doing probes in the backside of the stainless steel cladding that the historic doors were set back about 12 inches behind the placement of the existing doors, just from where the transition from masonry finishes to plaster finishes occurs. And we're also able to widen the doors because right now there's this very heavy blocking that's clad in stainless steel on either side of the doors. We're able to eliminate that and get back to the full width of the doors for a code compliant accessible entry into the lobby. And then comparable sections existing and proposed, illustrating the relative low height of the existing door at 7 foot and the more appropriately scaled door at 9.6. And then more importantly, to show the depth of the door situated behind this limestone return panel, which is visible in the historic photographs from the first half of the 20th century, pushing that infill back to its proper location, about 12 inches back from its current position. We also took a look at some of R.H. Robertson's other buildings that he completed at about the same time, within about 5 years of the Lincoln building of 1 Union Square West, to see sort of how he treated other entry infill. And these are two large-scale commercial buildings, similar in age and use to 1 Union Square West. This is the Corn Exchange Bank building, now demolished, that was down in Lower Manhattan, and the American Tract Society building near City Hall Park, both completed in the first 5 or 6 years of the 1890s, so 1892, I believe, and 1896. And what's interesting, this is a corner entry here at the Corn Exchange building, and you can begin to see, it's a little hard to read in this photograph, but you can begin to see the glazing across the transom and the very openness at this corner entry. And perhaps clear in this photo at the American Tract Society, this very tall, slender transom, and then these very transparent glass doors, which allow visibility into the vestibule. You can even see some of the decorative plasterwork through that transom. So in considering the proposal for 1 Union Square West, we thought it was important to understand how Robertson treated some of the buildings of sort of similar age and type. And we felt comfortable that in a design that was more transparent and lighter in feel than what was there originally, we felt this was an appropriate change for a building of his. We also took a look at some recent approvals, commission approvals for similar modifications of buildings of about the same age. This is the Church Missions building on Park Avenue, 281 Park Avenue South. This is a historic view of the building and a view of the entry to that building, which historically had even less glazing than 1 Union Square West. So very small windows with very heavy wood doors set within this portal. A pre-work overall photo and entry photo, and then a current condition illustrating the commission approved doors at the entry to this building. So this sort of progression from very heavy, dark, heavy wood doors to a much lighter, transparent, bronze framed aesthetic is something that we look to. Obviously, it's similar to what we're proposing at 1 Union Square West, and it is similar to what was approved back in 2015 for work at this individual landmark. And similarly at 71 Fifth Avenue, around the corner from 1 Union Square West, there was a similar sort of trajectory where historically there were very heavy wood frame doors at the entry portal. At the time of designation, all of that limestone had been basically scraped away, and very low percolite doors had been installed, all very similar to 1 Union Square West. And then under commission review, these very slender bronze and glass doors with a canopy and transom were approved as part of a restoration for that entry portal. So we see ourselves as sort of part of that continuum, and similar to some of Robertson's other work in contemporary buildings. So again, just to repeat, proposed rendering illustrating the area of work. As part of this work, there is no historic fabric that's being removed, and in fact, it's unsympathetic or mid-century infills coming out. And there's this work is part of a much broader restoration program for the building entry. The door material in this dark bronze, a far more noble material than what's there currently, is going to be compatible in finish with the base of the building. And the position of those doors will be back to their original depth. And then finally, in terms of their design, we feel that this is an appropriate update for the infill. It relates architecturally to the other infill across the building. And in its slender proportion, we think it echoes that internal steel and iron DNA of this early transitional skyscraper. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
All right, commissioners, any questions? All right, I'm not seeing any questions at this time, so we'll move to public testimony, and we may have questions after that. If you're in the meeting and would like to testify on this item, please raise your virtual hand so we can identify you. And I will turn it over to Lisa to take us through the testimony.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we had a couple people sign up. We'll start with Jennifer Falk.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. My name is Jennifer Falk, and I'm the Executive Director of the Union Square Partnership. And I submitted this as written testimony, so I'm only going to read a portion of it to be respectful of everyone's time. The Union Square Partnership is writing to express strong support for the plans as submitted to the Commission for the renovation of 1 Union Square West, the entry doorway that is being reviewed. We believe the proposed design will enhance the quality of the streetscape, allowing for improved visibility between the building lobby and the sidewalk while respecting the historic facade of the building and the existing architecture along Union Square West. The owners have been incredible champions of the neighborhood overall, and after undertaking stewardship of 1 Union Square West, they have prioritized and restored its historic features while incorporating necessary upgrades for their tenants. I have to be honest, I wish that I had 100 property owners like the Bookbinder family who care so deeply about both neighborhood and historic preservation of their property. And for all these reasons and more as outlined in my letter, we wholeheartedly support Bookbinder and Warren's plans for 1 Union Square West, and we hope that the members of the commission will as well. Thank you very much for hearing me out today.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll bring in Mark Bench.
Thank you, Lisa. Commissioners, good afternoon again. This is Mark Bench on behalf of the Victorian Society of New York, and my apologies for this omission in the previous testimony. It appears that the work under consideration by the commissioners is limited to the entrance infill. However, the Victorian Society also wants to note that we applaud the restoration of the missing and covered stonework features at the entrance. There is a discrepancy between boards 8 and 9 on the proposal for the front-facing doorway arch, with board 8 showing rock-faced voussoirs and 9 showing smooth-faced. Originally, these voussoirs were rock-faced to match those at the third-floor windows, and we strongly urge that this detail be properly restored. Regarding the entrance infill, we note that for the buildings of this type, the entrance was often the most elaborate original feature of the building. At the same time, it was the feature most often stripped and altered in attempts to modernize the building. We think the proposed stripped-down infill looks like another example of this approach, and pushing the doors plane further back from the building wall will create a dark and uninviting recess. Why should the entrance infill not have at least the level of historic character of the adjacent recreated storefront infill? Elaborate ironwork, heavily framed doors with paneled base, and recreated light fixtures, the mounting holes for which remain, would all help return the entrance to a historic design and character commensurate with the rest of this marvelous building. Lastly, as an aside, and to show support, encouragement, and approval for the owners of 1 to 3 Union Square West and their proposed restoration, would the city, with the encouragement of the Landmarks Preservation Commission, consider the reinstallation of the public street clock, as shown in the tax photos of 1898 and 1916? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And finally, we have Kelly Carroll. All right, did we move Kelly in?
Oh, I'm here now.
Okay.
And I'll be very brief. This is my last testimony ever, and it's also the shortest one I've ever written. So Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council, HDC applauds this application. Go Griffins. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. All right.
So I don't know where Lisa
Lisa
went.
may be frozen.
Yeah,
but
I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I'm sorry, I'm lost my connectivity. But there isn't anybody else on the list.
And I don't see any other hands raised either.
Okay, and Rich, is there any additional written testimony?
For the final time, just Manhattan CB5 recommended approval.
All right, thank you. Okay, Cass, would you like to respond to some of the comments?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And first, Kelly, thank you for your testimony, and I'm sure we'll see each other soon, but probably not over Zoom, or at least not over this venue in Zoom. But I do want to just address a couple of the comments of the Victorian Society. So thank you for noting the discrepancy between those two sheets. There's an elaborate set of drawings that Walter Melvin has prepared that focuses on the restoration scope, and indeed, those voustards will be rock faced. That work is underway. All that will be in limestone. So that's covered under the restoration drawings. And I'm sorry that we missed this. I think it's also worth noting that this building is really richly detailed. And so the work at the entry is by far not the most elaborate architectural expression. And in fact, the designation report spends a lot of time sort of talking about these sort of rich textures spread across the entire facade. So I think, we're restoring the doors to their original depth, which is actually very deeply recessed. I think these doors, because of that depth, become almost sort of secondary to the overall expression of the masonry around the entry. So I think, the goal of bringing a bit more daylight into the lobby is an important one for the building owners. And we feel that in the materiality and the design of these doors, it is appropriate within the work of Robertson to have a pair of doors and transom in bronze, similar to what we're proposing. So thank you for the opportunity to respond to that.
Okay, thank you. Any final questions, commissioners? All right, so I think we'll move to close the hearing and begin our discussion. Commissioner Gustafson, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. And Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed and we're going to begin our discussion. And I think I don't know that I need to set up anything or provide a context here because I think the application has been pretty thoroughly and clearly presented. So Commissioner Shamir Baran, would you like to start this one?
Yes, I agree with Kelly Carroll. This is very well done. The detail on the entryway and the door material are so much better than what's there now. There's in general just this cleaning up and refinement of all of the proposed work. So I think it's entirely appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Chapin.
I also agree that it's totally appropriate, and thank Cass for his always excellent and very thorough presentation.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Devonshire.
It's appropriate.
Commissioner Chen.
Vice Chair.
Commissioner Bland.
Oh, Griffins, appropriate.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Very well done and appropriate.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Appropriate. It's always amazing for me when I see proportions changing something into something else, an elegant thing. This is very elegant.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gustafson.
Anyone who wants to restore a griffin should be given free rein.
All right, great. Okay, so and I agree. I think just summing up for all of us, I think the removal of the existing infill and later alterations will remove features that detract from the building. the restoration will really enhance the base of this building. And I think, as Cass said, will be the primary, the masonry will be so richly detailed, will be the primary reading here. And the doors were historically very deeply recessed. And so I think, you know, secondary in nature, and that the, you know, sort of more modern, lighter glass is appropriate. I think it'll enhance the reading of the restored masonry, and it's consistent with what the commission has approved at similar individual landmarks and buildings in historic districts. And so I think with that, we'll support it. And so Commissioner Shamir Barron, would you make the motion?
Sure. In the matter of LPC 2106105, 1-3 Union Square West, the Lincoln Building individual landmark, a Romanesque revival style transitional skyscraper designed by R.H. Robertson and built in 1889 to 1890, and the applications to replace the entrance infill. I note that I approve finding that the proposed work will not eliminate or damage any significant architectural features, that the proposed entrance infill will be well scaled to the entrance and in keeping with materials and finishes of historic infill found at primary entrances of buildings of this age, type, and style, that the proposed infill will match the historic infill in terms of placement and basic configuration and will be simply designed and secondary to the robust and ornate masonry facade and entrance surround, that the presence of a large expanse of glazing at the infill will be compatible with the design of the building, which features similarly large expanses of glazing at the storefront and upper floor windows, and will be in keeping with the amount of glazing historically found at primary entrances of similar buildings designed by the architect R.H. Robertson, and the proposed work will support the special historic and architectural character of the building.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Rich, will you call the vote?
All right. Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire.
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
And Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Okay, with 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion carries.
All right, that's approved. Thank you.
Thank you all.
That concludes, thank you. That concludes our day today. Kelly, we will miss you. I know that you will still be a strong advocate for historic preservation, even though we won't see you every Tuesday, and good luck to you. And Rich, can't even explain how much we will miss you and all of the work that you do, and how you've been such an incredible member of our team. And we wish you the best of luck. And
thank you, Sarah.
And thank you. And commissioners, as always, thank you for your thoughtful comments and hard work and dedication and commitment to the work of the agency, the commission, and the city. So thank you all, and have a great day.
Hey, Rich, before you go.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, how we started with that song this morning?